Do you dream of speaking English fluently, but feel lost about where to start? It can be overwhelming. There's so much advice out there, and you might be struggling with grammar, unsure about which words to use, or even questioning if you'll ever speak like a native. But don't worry, this guide is here to clear up the confusion and help you find the right path to fluency. Today, we're going to uncover the best way to go from a beginner to a confident English speaker step by step, whether you're just starting out or feel stuck in your progress. The journey from beginner to fluent can seem daunting. However, with the right approach, it's not only possible, it's inevitable. So, let's dive in and break down the process so you can start speaking English with confidence, building the foundation. Why it's so important, picture this. You wouldn't build a house without laying a strong foundation, right? You wouldn't just start with the roof or walls, expecting everything to fall into place. The same goes for learning English. The foundation of your English journey is built with simple words and phrases that you can use in everyday situations. These are the building blocks that will allow you to communicate effectively from the very start. So, how do you lay this foundation? Start with the basics. Instead of getting caught up in complex grammar rules or trying to perfect long sentences, focus on simple, useful phrases that you can use immediately. For example, think about the things you might say when you first arrive in an English-speaking country. Maybe you want to order a coffee or ask for directions. You don't need long sentences or perfect grammar. All you need are phrases like, "I want water. Please, where is the station? How much is this?" These phrases are the core of your foundation. They're direct, simple, and they'll get you through most everyday situations. And here's the good news: you don't need to know hundreds or even thousands of words to get started. In fact, research shows that with just 500 to 1,000 of the most common words, you can already understand a huge amount of English. This doesn't mean you'll be speaking like a native yet, but it does mean that you can survive, communicate, and start feeling comfortable in English. This is where many learners go wrong. They often try to master grammar rules or learn long, complex sentences right from the start. But language acquisition is a process, and it's much easier when you begin with a solid foundation. Think of it like learning to walk before running. If you try to jump straight into advanced grammar or high-level conversations, it's easy to get overwhelmed and frustrated. Focus first on getting the basics down, those small survival phrases, and the rest will follow. Repetition is key. One of the best ways to solidify your foundation is repetition. Repeating simple sentences and phrases until they become second nature will help you internalize the language and make it feel more natural. Practice listening, speaking, and even reading these phrases in real-life contexts. The more you repeat, the more comfortable your brain will become with English. Once you've laid the foundation, it's time to start expanding your house. At this stage, your vocabulary should be growing, and your understanding of basic grammar should be more solid, but now it's time to build more complex structures, just like adding walls and rooms to a house. How do we do that in English? Start expressing yourself in new ways. At this point, you'll want to start using more vocabulary and constructing longer, more varied sentences. You'll also begin to use different tenses, past, present, and future, allowing you to talk about a wider range of situations. For example, instead of just saying, "I go to the store," you can now say, "I went to the store yesterday." "I will go to the store tomorrow." "I am going to the store now." By doing this, you're expanding your ability to express yourself in English. You're no longer confined to one tense or one type of sentence. Your English is now more flexible, allowing you to engage in conversations that are richer and more varied. Here's where it gets interesting. If you're already comfortable with the basics, like ordering food or asking for directions, it's time to stretch your abilities and start talking about different situations. Don't worry if it feels challenging at first. That's a good sign. Language learning is dynamic. And as you add new structures and words, English will start to feel less like a subject and more like a tool you can use in real life. It's all about balance, feeding your brain with input, like listening and reading, while also practicing output speaking and writing. Balance between input and output. To build your structure, you need both input and output. Input is the language you hear and read, which feeds your brain and teaches you new words and phrases. Output is the language you speak and write, which helps you practice and internalize what you've learned. Both are essential, and it's important to balance them. Pro tip: shadowing is one of the most effective tools. Shadowing is a fantastic technique for improving your pronunciation and fluency. This technique involves listening to native speakers and repeating what they say, almost like echoing them. It might feel strange at first, but trust me, it's incredibly powerful. How it works: you listen to a sentence, you try to repeat it, exactly as you hear it, at the same speed and rhythm. Start slowly at first, and then gradually increase your speed as you become more comfortable. With each repetition, you're not only improving your pronunciation, but also training your brain to think in English. You're aligning your speech with the natural rhythm of the language, which will help you sound more fluent over time. When I started learning English, I was terrible at pronunciation, but I found that shadowing made a huge difference. Not only did it help me get the sounds right, but it also improved my listening skills. I began to understand how native speakers use intonation, stress, and rhythm to make their speech sound natural. This is an area where many learners fall short. So if you want to get ahead, shadowing is a game changer. Now that you've built a solid foundation and started expanding your English skills, it's time to keep pushing forward. At this stage, you're no longer a beginner, but you're also not quite fluent yet. The next step is to continue practicing, refining, and expanding your vocabulary and grammar. The more you expose yourself to real-life English through conversations, podcasts, books, the more natural it will become. Remember, language learning is a journey, not a race. Keep taking small, consistent steps, and soon you'll look back and realize how much progress you've made. Reaching advanced fluency. You've already laid the foundation and built a sturdy structure with your vocabulary and grammar. The next step: it's time to decorate your house your fluency. Just like a house needs furniture and design to feel like a home, your English language skills need refinement and polish to feel complete. This is the exciting stage of language learning, where English stops feeling like a foreign language and starts to feel like an extension of yourself. As you advance, you'll focus on perfecting your pronunciation, mastering advanced grammar, and using more sophisticated vocabulary. Let's break down how you can elevate your skills and refine your fluency. Perfecting your pronunciation. At this stage, pronunciation is one of the key factors that can make or break your fluency. If you've reached a point where you can understand and form sentences, the next step is to sound natural and confident when you speak. Why pronunciation matters. You may have a solid understanding of grammar and vocabulary, but if your pronunciation isn't clear, it can create barriers in communication. Think about it. How many times have you struggled to understand someone because their pronunciation was unclear, even if their grammar was perfect? The same thing happens when you speak. Perfecting your pronunciation isn't about imitating native speakers exactly. It's about finding your own rhythm and flow while sounding as natural as possible. And this process takes time, just like the rest of your language learning journey. How to improve pronunciation. Practice shadowing. As we've discussed earlier, Shadowing is one of the best ways to improve pronunciation. Choose a short video or podcast with a native speaker and repeat what they say word for word, paying attention to stress, intonation, and rhythm. Record and compare. Record yourself speaking English and compare it to native speakers. You'll quickly identify the areas where you need improvement, such as stressing the correct syllables or using the correct intonation. Focus on intonation and stress. Native speakers don't just speak words, they add emotion and rhythm to their speech. Pay close attention to how sentences rise and fall. For instance, questions typically have a rising intonation at the end, while statements tend to fall. Break down difficult sounds. English has sounds that may be tricky for learners, especially when they don't exist in their native language. For example, the TH sound in think or this can be hard to master. Spend time practicing these difficult sounds by repeating them slowly at first, then at normal speed. Mastering sophisticated grammar. As you move into the advanced stages, you'll start using more sophisticated grammar structures. At this point, you should already be comfortable with basic tenses and sentence structures. So now's the time to level up. You'll start focusing on complex sentence structures, such as relative clauses, who, which, that conditional sentences, if, then, and passive voice. These structures allow you to communicate more effectively, express subtleties, and provide depth to your statements. How to master advanced grammar. Practice with complex sentence. Start incorporating complex sentences into your speech. Instead of just saying, "I like movies," try saying, "I like movies that are based on true stories." This gives your English more depth and sophistication. Use conditionals. Conditionals allow you to express hypothetical situations, future possibilities, or actions that depend on another event. For example, first conditional: if I study hard, I will pass the test. Second conditional: if I were you, I would travel more. Third conditional: if I had known about the event, I would have gone. Experiment with passive voice. The passive voice is used when the action is more important than the person doing the action. For instance, the book was read by millions focuses on the book being read rather than who read it. Use passive constructions to sound more advanced and to highlight important actions in your sentence. Expanding your vocabulary. By now, you should be comfortable with the core vocabulary of everyday English. Now's the time to start expanding your vocabulary with more sophisticated words and idiomatic expressions that will give you a natural, conversational flair. How to expand your vocabulary. Read widely. Read books, newspapers, and magazines, especially those that introduce you to formal, academic, or professional language. The more diverse your reading material, the more varied your vocabulary will become. Learn idiomatic expressions and phrasal verbs. English is full of idiomatic expressions. Break the ice. Under the weather and phrasal verbs. Look forward to. Give up. These phrases are common in native speech and can help you sound more natural when you speak. Use a thesaurus. A thesaurus is a great tool for expanding your vocabulary. If you're using a word too frequently, e.g., good, bad, try finding synonyms that fit the context better. Just be careful not to overcomplicate things. Use synonyms that match the tone and style of your conversation. Living in English. You've made it, your house is complete. English is no longer just a subject you study. It's now part of your life. But just because you've reached fluency doesn't mean your learning stops. Language is a living, breathing thing. It's dynamic, constantly evolving, and there's always room for improvement. What does living in English mean? Living in English means that you no longer have to think about English. It's as natural as your native language. You speak, read, write, and think in English as if it were your first language. You don't pause to remember grammar rules or search for the right word, it comes naturally. Here's the thing. Fluency isn't just about knowing words. It's about feeling them. The best learners don't just memorize vocabulary, they live it. They use English every day in their thoughts, conversations, and actions. English becomes as much a part of their thinking as their native tongue. When I reached advanced fluency in English, it was like a switch flipped in my brain. I could listen to a conversation, participate without effort, and express myself clearly, even in complex situations. But it didn't happen overnight. It took years of practice, exposure, and living in the language every day. The more I lived in English, the more comfortable I became. Until one day, I realized that English was no longer something I studied. It was a part of who I was. The power of continuous practice. Even at this stage, there's always room for improvement. The language is always changing, and so should your skills. Advanced learners often reach a plateau where they feel like they've mastered everything. But the truth is, language learning is never truly complete. How to continue improving. Stay curious. Keep challenging yourself by learning new vocabulary, exploring new grammar structures, and engaging with complex materials like podcasts, documentaries, and advanced literature. Engage with native speakers. Regular conversation with native speakers is one of the best ways to keep improving. Join discussion groups, talk to friends, or participate in online forums or social media discussions. Practice speaking on complex topics. Try discussing advanced topics such as politics, science, or philosophy. The more you challenge yourself to express ideas in English, the better you'll become at speaking fluidly and confidently. So, now you have the path from a complete beginner to fluent in English. With patience, consistency, and the right steps, fluency is not just a dream, it's a reality. Remember, the journey is gradual, but every single step you take brings you closer to living in English. English isn't just something you study, it's something you experience. The more you practice and immerse yourself, the more natural it will become. If you found this guide helpful, don't forget to like, comment, and share it with your friends who are also on their English learning journey. Subscribe to the channel for more tips, insights, and advice on how to continue improving your English. Every day, keep going. Fluency is within your reach.